All right. Hope everybody's doing good today. Robbie Falk here from 247 Star Daily News, covering Mississippi State sports over there at those two publications, and reminding you to go check out those two spots. We got good stuff going on at 24/7 Sports and also Starkville Daily News. Support local journalism. We appreciate you guys. We're going to talk a lot about the weekend and what happened for Mississippi State in a very, very important series against rival Ole Miss, and that was it was huge for Mississippi State to be the one to come out on top in that series against the Rebels. They win 2 out of 3, coming back from losing the first game of the series. In Oxford, State comes back and has 2 gutsy wins on Friday and Saturday. I thought that quite possibly has saved the season for the Bulldogs. And, you know, technically they could have survived the series loss or even getting swept, but it would have been incredibly difficult for Mississippi State to do that and make postseason. So mathematically, they wouldn't have been eliminated, but it would have been very, very difficult for Mississippi State. They've kept themselves now in position if they can do some things down the stretch to make a run and get into postseason. And when you get there, we've seen in the past, anything can happen, and that's all Mississippi State wants to do right now is find a way in postseason. And for that to happen, they got to start stacking these SEC wins, and they got 2 of them this weekend that are really important. And we're going to discuss how the series played out and what all we saw in Oxford. I was in Oxford for all 3 games, had to make the trip up Highway 9 3 days in a row. I'm so excited I don't have to do that for a long time. That is a brutal drive from Choctaw County, where I am right now, up Highway 9, going through Calhoun City and Bruce, and then getting into Oxford. But enjoyable 3 days. Enjoyed watching some baseball between 2 bitter rivals, Mississippi State and Ole Miss. And this series played out very similarly, I thought, in some ways, to the one last year between State and Ole Miss. Now, State has owned this series since 2016. This has gone completely in Mississippi State's favor. They have won 18 of 22 games in this series, I believe. They're 18-4 since 2016. They lost that series in Oxford in 2015, where they gave away a game there to end that series. But since then, Mississippi State won the SEC in 2016. They took 3 out of 4 that year against Ole Miss and won that series. 2017, they took all 4 games. They swept Ole Miss in Oxford. 2018, took 3 out of 4 again with a series win in Mississippi State. 2019, they go back to Oxford and get a sweep. So back-to-back sweeps in Oxford for Mississippi State, and they won all 4 games those 2 years. Of course, the series was off in 2020 because of COVID. In 2021, they only played the series and not the Governor's Cup game. Mississippi State won that series last year on what was a memorable ball game for Mississippi State when Tanner Allen had the bases clearing triple, and I think the 7th inning to take over that ball game against Ole Miss's best pitcher, Taylor Broadway. So a lot of similarities in this series in that the 2 teams split the first 2 ball games. Ole Miss won on Thursday night, Mississippi State won on Friday, and that set up a really important game on Saturday that Mississippi State was able to take. So now the Bulldogs are 18-4 since 2016 against Ole Miss. They're 8-1 against the Rebels in Oxford, which is really hard to believe. And Mississippi State's really taken over this rivalry in recent years. But there's been a lot of close games too. I mean, Mississippi State walked off 2 games in 2018 against Ole Miss, and Ole Miss was top 5 in the country. At that time, they had a really good team in 2018. Mississippi State ended up being the one that made the furthest run that year as they went to Omaha. So there's a lot of unrest in Oxford right now, and that's why I think the pressure was really on them this weekend. For Mississippi State to play a little more loose than that, I felt like that was kind of the difference. State didn't press. They lost that first game, and in game 1, it was really all about what Mississippi State wasn't able to do at the plate. They really struggled against DeLucia from Ole Miss. He pitched a complete game, gave up 2 solo home runs, and that's all he gave up in the entire ball game. And I just thought State's approach was a little too aggressive, I guess. They were trying to do a little too much. It's a smaller ballpark. The ball really flies out of there. And I thought State was just trying to do a little too much at the plate in that first game, and DeLucia was able to throw strikes. He didn't put anybody on base. There were no walks in the ball game. Struck out 7 or 8 batters, and State had 2 home runs in that game, and they were both of the solo variety. And really, the difference in the ball game was in that first inning. You have an opportunity to get out of the inning. Brandon Smith gets a ground ball over to R.J. Yeager. Took a little bit of a bad hop, and he wasn't able to get the out at first base. And then Ole Miss comes up there, and Kevin Graham, a veteran batter, makes Mississippi State pay for that with a 3-run home run. It's 3-0, just like that for Ole Miss. And I thought Brandon Smith pitched exceptionally well. He gave up 1 earned run the entire ball game. It was his 3rd straight really, really good outing. And, the LSU game 3 weeks ago was basically a start. He pitched 6 innings of relief. So technically it wasn't a start, but I consider the last 3 appearances he's had starts for Mississippi State, and he's given Mississippi State a chance in all 3. And the offense just has not been there for the Bulldogs to help him out. So the ball game got to 4-2, but State just could never break in offensively. But I was really impressed with the job that Smith did, and also the bullpen. Cam Tuller and Jackson Fristow also pitched well. So there were some encouraging things in that ball game for Mississippi State to take away. And I think that's why they came out in game 2 and played the way that they did. They didn't really try to do too much in that ball game. I thought the approach of the plate was great against Hunter Elliott. They just couldn't break through with a big hit. They made him throw over 30 pitches in the first inning. And Luke Hancock hit a solo home run, gives you the early lead. And then things really started to kind of unravel for Mississippi State. 4 pitches from Preston Johnson, and he was down 3-1 in the ball game. He gave up 3 solo home runs. I don't know how many times I've seen that, but they were just hammering the changeup. I think the first pitch might have been a fastball, can't remember, but the last 2 home runs were changeups to Gonzalez and Tim Elko, and they just hammered it out to center field. But Preston Johnson did what he's done most of the year. He didn't let any of that get him down. He didn't let that overwhelm him. And I thought he pitched – that might have been one of his most impressive performances just because of the adversity that he faced early. He got 1 inning in the book, and he'd given up 4 home runs because at the start of the second inning, he gives up another home run to Peyton Chatagnier. But against that offense, Ole Miss is thinking long ball. That's kind of where their mindset is offensively right now. They hit a lot of solo home runs this weekend. I think they hit maybe 2 home runs that were 2 or 3 run bombs. The rest of them were solo shots. And that game was the perfect example of solo home runs not getting you beat. And it didn't work for Ole Miss. They hit those 4 home runs in the first 2 innings, and Preston Johnson just kind of battled the rest of the way and kept it where it was. I thought that was huge and allowed the offense to really explode once they got Elliott out of there and they got to the bullpen. So State scores 9 runs against Ole Miss's bullpen and takes a 10-4 lead in that game. They had to throw Casey Hunt out there. They kind of warmed him up to the point Chris Lamona said that they had to put him out. They felt like they had to put him out on the mound even after State had extended that lead from 7-4 to 10-4. And Casey gave up a few hits, gave up a few runs, but another guy that really just clamped down late in the ball game. Tying run comes up to the plate in the 9th inning, and Casey gets a ground ball to get out of the game and give Mississippi State the win. I thought that was just huge for State because then it puts pressure on Ole Miss on day 3. You're going to have a big crowd in attendance. Fans are starting to clamor for Mike Bianco's job. There's an opportunity for them to finish with the series win over Mississippi State for the first time in 7 years. And I thought all the pressure was on Ole Miss. I really felt that the pressure of that ball game was going to be all on the Rebels and not so much on Mississippi State, even though both of these teams are kind of in similar spots with their postseason. So, State comes out. I thought Cade Smith pitched the ball really well until his final inning. He started to lose command a little bit, but I thought Pico Khan came in there, or I guess it was Jackson Fristow that came in there and got them out of that inning that kept that game in Mississippi State's favor. And then it got to a bullpen game. State has an opportunity there to end the game, but the big problem for Mississippi State on Saturday and in the first game of the series on Thursday was just those opportunities to drive in runs and score runs, and they just couldn't get the big hit. And we've seen that a lot this year. They got them on Friday, but situational hitting just was not there early on Friday, and it was not there on Thursday or Saturday. State had scored 6 runs, but they left the bases loaded a couple of times. They struck out against Ole Miss's bullpen. They struck out 13 times, and that's just too much. They weren't taking advantage of opportunities on the base pass, and it haunted them there in the 9th inning. You groove a pitch in there to a really good hitter in Jacob Gonzalez, and the freshman Pico Khan sees that one fly out of the yard, 2-run shot, tie ball game. And the thought process at that point by a lot of people, I know for me, admittedly, was Mississippi State's going to let this one slip away. We've seen it before from this bullpen. We've seen these opportunities missed by Mississippi State turn into losses this year, and there's several of them stacked up over the conference schedule and even non-conference. So the thought process is Ole Miss is going to hit another home run at some point in the 9th inning, but Casey Hunt comes in there after throwing 50-plus pitches the day before, and I thought Hunt was really good on Saturday. He was better than he was on Friday. And he comes in there, he faces Tim Elko, gets him out, faces Kemp Alderman, 2 guys that can send the ball out of the yard, and he got both of those guys out. And then what he did is clamp down in the 10th and 11th, and that was huge. To come in there and throw up a 0 again in the 10th inning was really big for Casey Hunt because all State needed at that point was just one big swing, and they got it. Brad Cumbus made Brandon Johnson pay, sends one out to left field, and Mississippi State takes the lead. Casey Hunt comes back and just throws strikes, and that next inning gets 3 flyouts. So just a really big series for Mississippi State to get this. Both of these teams were kind of free-falling a little bit, but I thought State had kind of gathered themselves in the last couple of weeks. They had a 3-1 week, and they knocked off a top 20 team in Auburn in series and got a big midweek win as well. And so I felt like State was kind of gathering themselves. Ole Miss has been free-falling. They lost to Southeast Missouri State during the midweek. They had just lost a series to South Carolina. They were swept, I think, a week before that. So this is a team that was really, really teetering, and Mississippi State was able to make sure that they didn't gather their footing and knock Mississippi State off a cliff. Because now you got State's kind of building momentum a little bit. They've won 4 out of their last 6 SEC games. They've won their last 2 midweek games. So they're starting to gather themselves a little bit. And now you got to keep that momentum rolling. You got a huge week coming up this week. And what you got to do this week is you've got to stack another 3-1 week together here at least for Mississippi State. Now, if you can find a way to get 4 wins, you are right back in the thick of things. And I think that's going to be big. We got an End Zone 11 member in here. Yeah, so if you guys want to throw in some questions, I see my boy from the End Zone 11 in here. How many SEC wins do you think we need, 14, 15, or 16? I'm going to say 14. I feel that 14 would get Mississippi State in. And that's getting – they have 8 wins now, so you got to find a way over the next 3 weekends to get 6 wins. So that's you don't. Let's see. Do they have 4 weekends? They have 4 weekends left, so get 6 wins. So don't get swept by anybody. But if you could pick up a sweep here that against Missouri, that's huge. I mean, you go on the road against Missouri this weekend. You find a way to win that series, and you're at 10 wins. You sweep that series, and you're at 11 wins at that point. You need to find 3 wins somewhere. 4 wins, I feel like, after that would absolutely get you in. I think you're locked in at 15 SEC wins. So that's kind of the key right now. Try to find a way to get to 15 here in the next 4 weekends. And you have a tough schedule coming up. Missouri is not a pushover. Their record's not good, but this is not a team that you can just walk in and take 3 wins from, that you feel really confident about doing that. I mean, this is a team that came to Mississippi State last year that was just awful, and they could have swept that series. They won the series over State late in the year, an eventual national champion. But they very easily could have swept that series. So this is going to be a tough weekend. It's one of those deals where You are now down to the coach speak answer of taking it one game at a time. You literally are at that point. You have to take it one game at a time for Mississippi State every single weekend. And the importance is the SEC games. You need to win those midweek games too. But the importance is getting those SEC wins. That's what you're looking at this point. And I feel like the midweek game against Ole Miss is big too. You need to go get that game too. So 14 to me is you feel like you can get it. 15 is the safe magic number. You get to 15 SEC wins. I don't know how many teams in the past have gotten 15 SEC wins and not made it in. That's kind of the magic number for State. 15 SEC wins, and I feel like they're in. Whether they're a 2 seed or 3, I don't know, but that's really not important for Mississippi State at this point. I think they just need to get into postseason and see what happens. Cameron, happy to sneak out of there with a series with as much as we left on base. Pitching and bullpen did what they had to do. Absolutely agree. I don't think there's anything pitching-wise that I take away from the weekend bad. I thought all 3 starters pitched really well. Even Preston Johnson gave up those 4 home runs. And like I said, I mean, that might have been one of his most impressive performances. I thought he had his best game of the year against Auburn. But the fact that I don't know how many guys could come out there after giving up 4 home runs with only 1 inning logged and be able to do what he did. The mental toughness right there was just something you don't see. That's going to be an underrated part of this season for Preston Johnson to come in and do what he did. I just don't think that can be appreciated enough. I thought that was huge. And then Brandon Smith, I mean, State's starting pitching right now. I might go as far to say I feel better about the starting pitching right now for Mississippi State than I did for most of the regular season last year. And that's very strange to say. But, Christian McLeod was kind of a wild card. You didn't know what you were getting on Sundays. Will Bednar, you knew that he was going to battle every week, but he didn't have, a great regular season. He was exceptional in the postseason, especially in Omaha. But I might feel better, more secure about starting pitching for Mississippi State right now than I did last year. And that's really weird to say. But I also am starting to feel a little better about the pieces that they have in the bullpen. The numbers are scary right now for Mississippi State. I know most of you guys saw it. What we reported the other night, Brooks Auger's out for the season. I'm not expecting Parker Stinnett either to return. So, and that might change, but Chris Lemonis hadn't given us a final update on that, but he did tell us that Brooks Auger is out for the year. That was one of your more reliable pitchers out of the bullpen. He's gone. But Casey Hunt, you look at that ERA, it's in the 6s right now, but that doesn't tell the story of how you feel about Casey Hunt. That's a guy that I feel like can go in a ball game in the 9th inning and shut down somebody. And I feel really good about him. Jackson Fristow showed some good things this weekend. Cam Tuller had a good out recorded on Thursday night. Pico Khan has looked really good. I thought he was really good this weekend. He made a bad pitch to Jacob Gonzalez, but I'm starting to feel better about him. You got to have the Mikey Teppers of this roster step up and give you something. So these bullpen arms, every inning you can get that's a 0 from these guys is a win. And every person that you can get step in and make some kind of meaningful contribution is a win for them. Mikey Tepper's got to be that for Mississippi State. They've got to find a way to get something out of him to just add an extra arm in there. You've got Casey Hunt into it. Jackson Fristow showed some promise. Mikey Tepper's the third piece that you really need. Oh, Cameron, you think Revy Higgins will get some playing time next year? I do. He's been dressing out, but he hadn't played, so they're planning to redshirt him. That freshman class is really talented. They need that group to make a big step. You know what you got from Hunter Hines. Slade Alford has been playing a lot lately, but we still have not seen his full potential. He's got to take that step next year. Revy Higgins has got to come in there and give you something next year. Aaron Downs has got to take a big step. You're going to lose a lot of guys in this lineup. And those guys have got to take the next step to give you something next year, because there's a lot of pieces there that's going to be missing, but a lot of talent in that freshman class. Tanecki, Warren Nolan has state predicted as going 13-17 in the conference with the RPI at 56. I think we have 14 wins. It'll be 50-50 shot. Yeah, 13 and 17 is not going to get them in. 14 wins, I feel like we'll have you around 50 in the RPI. It's going to be close, and I still think 14 could get them in. There's been a lot of teams that have gotten in with 14 conference wins. I think they'll get the benefit of the doubt with that. But like I said, you feel really good if you get to 15 wins. I think you're going to be in the 40s RPI-wise. So they should get in with 15. So that's again, that is the magic number. That's 7 more SEC wins. So got to win your series against Missouri. I think you need to take a series against Florida. And then you're going to have to steal a series maybe from Texas A&M there, and don't get swept by Tennessee. I mean, there is no margin for error right now for Mississippi State. Really, the thing that would help you here is you sweep Missouri. I think that's the key right now. You sweep Missouri, and then you just try to find wins in those last 3 series. You don't have to sweep any of those teams. You're going to have to win one of those series, but you don't have to sweep any of those teams, and you just got to find some wins somewhere. End zone, it's going to be odd, but we might actually try to win a few games in Hoover. Yeah, I think that you're going to need to do that. This is not a year to go in there and pitch Jack Walker. No offense to him, but that's a midweek guy that this isn't the time to go in there and pitch him one of those games. You're going to have to pitch some of your good starters at that to try to find some wins. Because even if you feel like, you have 14, 15 SEC wins in the regular season, even if you feel good about going into a regional, you need to try to improve your stock a little bit too, and also secure that spot. It's been shown the past couple of years that they're just not putting a whole lot of stock in the SEC tournament. State went in there and laid an egg in 2 games, and they weren't really punished at all for doing that. So, but I do think it will help their RPI if they go in there and win a couple games. LeBron's Christian was so odd. First-round talent, just lost at the end. Yeah, and now that he's had elbow surgery, it kind of makes me wonder if he was kind of starting to feel a little fatigued, a little soreness there late in the year in the College World Series. I'm starting to think maybe he was starting to wear down a little bit then, because a really talented guy, and he had some good games too during the regular season. He just, for whatever reason, in the postseason, things just kind of fell apart for him, and I think that getting a tired arm had something to do with that probably. Tanecki, this weekend's a really important versus really good team, Missouri. If you can get out of Columbia with 2 wins, it'd be big. Yeah, that you have to win this series. You really have to win this series. And then, like I said, I mean, it would not hurt to get you a sweep here. Because that's one thing that, there's been sweeps there available for Mississippi State. Alabama and Auburn, both of those games, both those series, they could have swept. And then LSU, they were swept. And what's helped Mississippi State in the past is they, look back at that 2018 season. State started off 2-7 in the league, but then they go out, they take 3 from Arkansas. They take 3 from Florida late in the year, number 1 Florida. Those series, getting those sweeps, really saved Mississippi State's tail. They weren't going to make the SEC tournament. So, the sweeps are they're so hard to come by, but they're so important. 2016, you win the SEC because you sweep like 3 straight series to end the regular season. You don't win the SEC without sweeping all of those series. So it's just really important to find those when you can get them, and then don't get swept. That right now, that LSU series is looming large. When you get swept in that and you don't sweep Alabama and Auburn, and you're behind the 8 ball right now. I mean, you take just one of those games against LSU, and you feel totally different right now about this team. You take one of those games, you take 2-series sweep against Alabama and Auburn, and you're competing in the SEC West. I mean, that's how thin the line is in the SEC. That's really crazy how all that stuff works. But State's had some opportunities out there. You had an opportunity to win the series at Georgia. You should have swept Tulane. So there's so many things out there that's hindered Mississippi State in the past, but now you're starting to win some games and you're starting to see things turn for Mississippi State differently, where when they make mistakes, it doesn't kill them. And that's the mark of a team that's getting better, and they're becoming a little more proven in this league. And I think that's big for Mississippi State down the stretch. And that's kind of when you start to see teams get hot and make runs. That 2018 team, they just couldn't do anything right early in the season, and then they start to find ways to win ball games when they haven't played their best. And that's what this Mississippi State team has done in the past that has given them so much success. 2017, 2018, 2019, last year. So that's the kind of mentality this team has to have here down the stretch. Who's going to play catcher next year? I don't know. That's a big question mark. I think they need to go out and probably get a proven catcher in the portal somewhere, a guy that can hit, a guy that can really play behind the plate too. It's going to be tough to have another Logan Tanner type, but you don't know you don't know if you're going to get Ross Highfield to school from Madison Central, and you don't really know about the guys coming back. I mean, ideally, it'd be great to get Luke Hancock back for another year, but I don't know if you can count on that. On a guy like that coming back for a fifth year. He's getting older in age, and he's probably going to be ready to start his pro career. But we'll see. He's going to have the opportunity if he wants to, but you can't count on that. So State's got to be looking for someone in the portal, I think, to give them a season to kind of bridge the gap. You got Gray Bain, who's redshirting this year. That's a player that could factor in possibly. But yeah, it's a wait and see. That's a big position to fill. There's going to be a lot of big positions. You got to find a middle infielder. I feel like Slade Alford's going to take over at third base. That Hunter Hines is going to take over at first base. You're going to have an outfielder or two. So several spots to fill for Mississippi State next year. Cameron, you think Mule and Kellum leave this year? I can't see Kellum leaving, but Mule is so hot. Yeah, I gotta think Mule is probably going to go, but Kellum could use another season. I think he's a draft eligible sophomore, so he could leave this year if he wanted to. But there's so much he can accomplish in one more year in college and still have that leverage next year as a junior that I could see him returning. I haven't heard any rumblings either way, but I could see him coming back for one more year. I think this will probably be it for Brad, but you never know. He likes it here, so maybe he wants to play another year. Harrison, were you surprised Tepper didn't get an inning this weekend? A little bit, but I just don't think that they trust that he can go out there and get some outs and not walk guys and things like that. He hasn't come in a big moment in a while and been able to kind of get through it. So they probably didn't think it was his time to come out there they have, a 3-run game or a 2-run game. I mean, there wasn't a ton of good opportunities to do that, but I think you're going to see him definitely against Ole Miss on Tuesday, I would imagine, in Pearl. So that should be an interesting game, man. Ole Miss's bullpen is already pretty depleted in their pitching situation. Mississippi State's is too, but I don't know who is going to pitch in either of those ball games, or for either team in that ball game. Tuneki, any word on facility updates? Was at the open practice Saturday and noticed they were replacing video boards. Heard they're adding corner video boards. Yeah, I believe that is correct. They are doing right now. They're putting some new ribbon boards up as well. So that's that they're putting in. I think what I saw like $10 million or something for video boards. So they're just doing some of those little minor fixes, which I say minor, but that adds up. But I think the next thing they're doing is something to the west side in the upper deck. We don't know what that is. John Cohen's been very secretive about what that is specifically, but looks like that they're going to do something there. Eventually, we'll see something in the south end zone as well. But I think before they do something in the south end zone, we'll probably see a new indoor practice facility there for state over at the Seal Complex. That's kind of in the works right now. They're talking through that as well. So, but right now, video boards, ribbon boards, and then the next thing on the agenda at Davis Wade is going to be the west side. End zone is new T&L coming out tonight or tomorrow. We're going to record tonight, probably about 7 or so, and we'll have a recap of the weekend there. So it'll come out probably late tonight, if I had to guess. Brian's in charge of all that, and we are all at the mercy of Brian Haydad on all that. Cameron, do you think Kobe Holcomb makes it to campus? It's going to be tough. He's lighting it up this year in junior college. Pitcher at Northeast. He is he's looking like the real deal. That would be a tremendous get to get him to campus. They need guys like that. That's another position they got to go to the portal and go get some guys because you're losing players, and then we've seen now just how thin the roster is. How thin the roster is at that pitching position, and not really just from numbers perspective, but just the contributors. There's just not enough guys right now that you can count on. So State's got to go get some guys that are competitive that can get on the mound and help them next year. It's going to be a really interesting offseason for Chris Lemonis because there's not a ton of guys returning from this team, and he's going to have to kind of retool some of this roster and get some guys in there that that can really help you win next year because this is a national championship program now, and this is a down year for Mississippi State. I think most everyone is upset about what's happening this year, but you're allowed to have some of these seasons. You can't stack a couple of these seasons up after you've won a national championship. This fan base is not going to stand for that, and so we'll see what happens. Cameron Walling making an appearance in the Governor's Cup. I think that's a possibility. He was warming up on Friday or Saturday. He was warming up Saturday. I think he was in the bullpen. So he's evidently they believe he's close. If they're warming him up in a big SEC series like that, it would not shock me in the least to see him go out there. And you want things to click for that kid. He's been through a tough time here, and he's got all the makings of being a stud. He just hasn't been able to put it all together for whatever reason. You want things to click, and you need him. I mean, if something clicks for him down the stretch, that is a tremendous get out of the bullpen to have a left-hander like that can come in, blow a fastball past somebody, or get a swing and a miss on a breaking ball. He's got so much stuff. It's just it hasn't been able to click for him. If he can get it together, I mean, just adding one extra guy to this bullpen can change so much for Mississippi State. I've been saying that all year. Getting a KC Hunt back could change things for Mississippi State, and it is. Jackson Fristow getting it together consistently could change things for Mississippi State, and we've seen that. He's had some rough outings, but he's also helped Mississippi State win ball games. Mikey Tepper, if he can get in there and be a really good guy for an inning or two, that can change things. One or two guys being added to the mix here could really help Mississippi State down the stretch. Tuneki, any updates on spring practice? I haven't been last couple of weeks. I went to the spring practice game or whatever they were wanting to call that. And, of course, that got rained out, so I wasn't able to see that. So I haven't been able to see them in the last couple of weeks with baseball going on and things. But it seems like it's been a productive spring for everybody. Will Rogers has been pretty good in the spring, and you've seen some guys step up, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So, we'll see if that can carry over to the fall. They need to be really good in fall practices leading up to the season, and we'll see what happens from there for Mississippi State. Big season for Mike Leach coming up. I think he really needs to win 8 games this year. He's got a lot of returning production. The defense has some really good players on the defensive line. I'm excited to see that group this year. The 2 deep looks really good there, and there's some talented players at linebacker. I think the safety play is going to be improved, and we'll see about cornerbacks after losing Martin Emerson. But I think that this team has the makings of being successful this year. 8 wins should be your expectation, maybe more. And it's a tough schedule, but it's time for Mississippi State in year 3 under Mike Leach. It's time for them to take a big step forward. I thought they took a step forward last year. They need to take a big step forward this year and win some more ball games. All right, so a reminder: Mississippi State and Ole Miss in Pearl on Tuesday night. Governor's Cup. State is going for the 6th straight win in the Governor's Cup, just like they were 6 straight series wins. That is just an incredible run by Mississippi State. 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, and 22. They've won every one of those series against Ole Miss. And the last 5 times, well, I guess this will be the 5th straight Governor's Cup because they didn't play last year. It's been an unreal run. It's been the greatest run for either of these teams, as far as I can tell, looking back at the records, in the history of the series, which is, it's been well over 400 games played between these 2 teams. This has been the biggest run by Mississippi State or Ole Miss. And it's been really impressive because Ole Miss has had some good teams during that stretch too. I think back at that 18 team that I was mentioning. And they had Ryan Rolliston pitching, who ended up being a first-round pick. They had a really good lineup. And Mississippi State just found ways to win those ball games, had a couple of walk-offs. Just really impressive. Taneki, will Bianco be in the dugout at Dude Noble next year? It's not looking good. It is not looking good for him. There were already people that were hoping that he would go to LSU last year when they were bounced from the Super Regional. He returned almost the entire offensive lineup from last year, which I thought was a really good lineup last year. And almost every single player's production has gone down. Their home run numbers are fine, but look at the batting average, look at the strikeouts. Everybody's production just about has gone down. And that's not good. You have a lineup full of juniors and seniors, and then a few sophomores that played last year as well, and they're just not producing outside of those home runs. And then their pitching has just been really bad. They lost 2 really good starters from last year, in Gunnar Hoagland and Doug Nikhazy, and they haven't been able to replace that. And it's been a very similar story to what Mississippi State's facing this year. Mississippi State returned a lot of guys from last season. You have that experience of going to the national championship and winning it. And State just has not been able to find the pitching, and the offense has been inconsistent outside of hitting home runs. So both of these teams are on similar footing, but Ole Miss is starting to sink a little further down. State has kind of found itself a little bit. I still think this team kind of is what it is. They're not going to have the pitching. The offense is going to be inconsistent, but the potential is there, and now they're finding ways to win tough ball games, and that's a good sign for Mississippi State. But the roster is what it is for Mississippi State. But, yeah, back to the original question. It's hard to imagine that Bianco will be coaching at Ole Miss next year. Oh, Taneki, what seed would State be in the SEC tournament right now? I haven't looked at all that, but I would imagine they would be 12 maybe. I haven't looked at the 11 or 12. Ole Miss and Missouri are probably they're projected out of it, I would imagine, right now. I haven't looked at the standings. Kentucky's probably down there, so State might be one of the last teams in at this point. But they got a chance to move up the pecking order here in the next few weeks. And this is a big stretch at the last part of the schedule. Every team that you're playing right now on the weekend is going to have an RPI under 40. So every weekend, seemingly, your RPI should go up. And the more you win, obviously, the higher you're going to jump. State's got a chance to move up the boards a little bit, but they have to win games. Just simply playing these teams isn't going to get Mississippi State in the tournament. They've got to win games down the stretch, and they got 4 huge series coming up. So Missouri coming up this weekend. Then you got Florida, you got Texas A&M, you got Tennessee. The last 3 series are just really difficult for Mississippi State, but they're just going to have to find a way. Texas A&M is playing really good right now, especially at their place. They took a series from Arkansas, I think. And then Tennessee, of course, is having the greatest start in SEC history. They are, I believe, 17-1 at this point, which is just unbelievable to think about and see as they've started with the best start in SEC history. So that's a team that's looking really good right now. Jesse, how many transfers in and out on women's basketball? Not expecting any more out. You never know. There's still another week to go before that transfer portal closes for entering it. I'm not expecting anybody else out of there, but I'm expecting an announcement on the next transfer coming up soon. LeBron's. I'll say this: we're in a much better spot with the rest of the season than Ole Miss is. You're right about that. I mean, they got coming up: Arkansas, Texas A&M. They caught a break really with their East schedule this year, with the exception of they played Tennessee, and that didn't go so well. But I mean, they still got some tough teams ahead here, and I don't see it getting much better for them either. Taneki, who's the next women's basketball transfer? I'm still waiting for the go-ahead on that. It should be finalized. It was supposed to be finalized last week, but it hasn't been yet. So I'm still waiting to release that, but we should know in the first part of the week. But, yeah, they're bringing in another Power 5 player, and, we'll see how that goes. Arkansas, LSU, Missouri, and A&M. Yeah, that's probably right. Oof. Arkansas, LSU, and A&M series is going to be tough for Ole Miss. It's really hard to believe that this has happened to Ole Miss and Mississippi State too. But Ole Miss is in a worse situation because of what they had returning. I mean, you returned literally almost everybody from that team last year on offense. But it's just it shows you the importance of pitching and how important pitching still is. And there's not a lot of teams in the league that have top to bottom great pitching right now, and a lot of that is because of injuries. But there's a lot of great lineups in this league. The pitching has it's not been one of the best years pitching wise. But you look at a lot of those injuries. I mean, Arkansas lost Peyton Paulette. Mississippi State lost Landon Sims. Now they've lost Brooks Auger and Stone Simmons. There's Florida's best pitcher, Hunter Barco, out. Georgia's best pitcher's been out for a while, and he came back this weekend, but he was out for a little bit. One of LSU's better pitchers was out for a little bit. It's just you go up and down the list, and there's so many guys that have gone out this year with injuries. LeBron's, when do you think Cumbus will go? He's an interesting prospect. There's so much to like about his potential from an athletic standpoint. And I haven't really heard from scouts kind of where they're projecting him. I mean, I would think top 10 rounds. He's so raw and there's so much potential with him. And that's why I've always been intrigued with what he could do with a full year where he's not coming in from football late and having to catch up with all the other players on the team, because I just don't think people realize how difficult that is to play 2 sports in the SEC and compete at a really high level, and not only compete at a high level, but start. And, with football, he wasn't a regular starter, but he was playing significant reps, and he would have very easily been in the lineup here in the last couple of years for Mike Leach. And in baseball, he's been in and out of the lineup for the first couple of years, and the last 2 years he's been an everyday starter. And that's the last 2 years it's been, a guy that's been coming in late and missing the fall in baseball and coming in late and having to catch up. Well, now you're starting to see and pick up the slider. Slider away had been a killer for Brad Cumbus. Couldn't lay off of it. Last 2 days, he really picked up that slider. That second home run he hit, the one he hit to win the game yesterday, was a slider. And that's something that he hasn't been able to pick up as much. Spin has given him fits. He's been a fastball guy. But he's becoming a more well-rounded hitter, has a better eye for it. And I think what's really been impressive to me is to see his evolution in the field. What he's been able to do, picking up balls off the bat, the diving catches that he's made. I think he can play center field. He has become a well-rounded baseball player, and at his size and his ability, he hits the ball so hard. He is a guy that could be an MLB player in the future. I truly believe that. I've always believed that, and I've always believed that with time, the more pitches he sees, the more time he spends in the batting cage and batting practice, the better he will be. And we're finally seeing Brad Cumbus become who we thought he could be. He's leading the team batting average. He's just become a really good player. LeBron, do you really think he was an NFL tight end like Kobe Jones said? Yeah, I think he could have played in the NFL too. That's the kind of athlete you're dealing with. I mean, you're not dealing with, say, just for instance, a backup quarterback that is also a backup outfielder that may or may not play the piano. Just like somebody like that. You're not dealing with that. You're dealing with a guy that is a legitimate next-level player in both sports. And that doesn't come along very often. It is very difficult to play in the SEC in one sport, much less two. And that's what he's been able to do. He's not just some guy that sits on the bench and pats everybody on the back. I mean, he can come in there and make a difference in both sports. I could have seen him play either pro sports, which is just amazing. You're dealing with a very, very rare talent in what Brad Cumbus has been able to do. Owen, is Ole Miss done? Probably, yeah. It's going to be really difficult for them. Tennessee State would be the 8th seed right now in the SEC tournament. Okay. I haven't looked at the standings, but that's not a bad spot. Missouri and South Carolina, the bottom two. I forgot about South Carolina. Oh, that was a bad series loss for Ole Miss to lose to them. They're not good. They had losing record, I think, overall. MSU dog, Cumbus looks like Hunter Renfrow sometimes. He's got some freakish abilities like Renfrow. I really think that the guy can make a run. He's starting to really kind of round into form here. I think he's going to be a good one. All right, any more questions? Had another good chat here today. I know you guys are excited about the weekend, but big week for Mississippi State coming up. They really need to win on Tuesday night. They have to win at Missouri. I think you need to get a 3-1 week here this week for Mississippi State again. Where do you think Bianco ends up? I don't know. I'm really interested in that. I don't know if he wants to retire, if he wants to keep coaching. It'll be interesting. Owen, who pitches Tuesday night? I have no clue, man. I have no clue what's going to happen. He is Chris Lemonis has his hands full, but so does Ole Miss. I mean, you don't want to burn your pitchers. You got guys that have pitched a lot this past weekend. It's an important game, I feel like, but it's not as important as what you got coming up this weekend. So, starting out, I don't know. I mean, do you throw Jack Walker out there? He's kind of struggled to throw strikes. You just need somebody to come in there and throw strikes. You can't pitch Brandon Smith. You need him this weekend. Pico maybe can get you 3 innings. You might come out and start Pico. I just don't know. It's going to be difficult. You're going to have to have guys come in there that don't usually pitch a whole lot that give you some innings. And it might be a piece together day. You might have a guy pitch every inning Drew Talley's going to have to pitch. Cole Cheatham might have to come in there and pitch. State's going to have to use a lot of guys. Lane Forsythe's going to have to probably pitch, and he could be a guy that works. Jay, thoughts on the shift? Seems to burn us more than help. You'd be surprised. The numbers say that the numbers are overwhelmingly positive, them running the shift, because otherwise they wouldn't be doing it. So the key to the shift, and unless you're giving up a bunt or something, which the reason guys don't do that very often is because it's difficult to do if you're not used to doing it. State got beat on it twice against Ole Miss, and then a couple other hits against the shift. But more often than not, you are getting outs in the shift, or you're forcing a guy to get uncomfortable with what he's doing. So the numbers suggest that it does work, and that's why Mississippi State continues to run it. The key is pitching correctly to it. If you're not pitching into the shift, then you're not – more often than not, you're going to give up a base runner or something like that. You've got to be able to pitch into it, to make a batter hit into the shift, and keep them off balance. So that's kind of the key to it. And a lot of times when you see guys beat it, it's because the pitcher was not able to execute his pitch. Thoughts on Brandon Walker's interview with Leach? I watched the first 5 to 10 minutes, and I had to do something. I wasn't able to finish it, but it was entertaining. I'm going to have to go back and watch the rest of it. Oh, and probably another Andrew Walling appearance. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. I could see him coming out there, and I wouldn't be opposed to that. He needs to get some innings. You got to get something out of him. You need to find out if he can help you, and I think he can if he gets it together. LeBron's, I think we should shift after one strike in a count, but I also am not paid millions to make that call. It's a really interesting thing to do whenever you rely on the shift. And I was just like, there's a lot of it I don't understand. When do you shift? A lot of times you'll see a guy with 2 strikes, they'll move into the shift. So it's a very methodical thing, and I don't have a problem with it. The MLB's doing away with it, I think, but I don't have a problem with it. I think that it's on the batters to find a way to beat it. It's strategy. And that's what baseball is all about. It's all about strategy. Why are we eliminating strategy? You got to be able to beat it. You got to be able to find a way. And the reason teams do it is because the batter's shown a tendency to consistently hit the ball in a certain spot, whether it be with 2 strikes or whenever they get to the plate. Pull side hitters, you're going to see that shift being heavy rotation. If a guy's going to be a pull hitter, straight pull hitter, Kellen Clark, some of those guys, Hunter Hines, teams are going to go into the shift. Oh, is Parker Stinnett done? I'm hearing not to expect him back, but we don't have official word yet. We're still waiting on Chris Simonis to give us that. He gave us a note on Brooks Auger, like I said, but he would not confirm anything on Parker Stinnett, which I thought was interesting. But he said we should have something this week. We'll see if that happens. Jay, is Jaeger the best transfer we have had in the last 10 years? I have to think about that. I mean, you had some JUCO guys that came in that were really good. I guess those aren't straight transfers. But I'm thinking about Nate Lowe and Jack Kruger. Those guys were at other Power 5 team, I guess Nate Lowe wasn't, but those guys were at other colleges before they transferred to JUCO. But he's up there. He's definitely up there. He is living up to the potential here down the stretch. Chris seems to be enjoying interviews a lot more recently. Yeah, I think the winning has a lot to do with that. This has not been Chris's favorite year to do interviews. I'll say that. He has not been excited most of the time to talk to us. But, I mean, who is excited to talk to us? Let's be honest. Owen, do you think Casey Hunt is our most reliable guy of the bullpen right now? Yes. Yes, he is. And like I said, you look at that 6-run earned run average, and you wouldn't think so, but it doesn't tell the story. He started the year rough, and then when he was kind of getting back into it after missing like a month, he was a little rusty, but his last few outings have been really good. I didn't think he was great against Ole Miss on Friday, but he battled out of trouble. He got himself into some trouble in that ninth inning, but he was able to get out of it. And I thought that showed us a real sign of maturity. And then last night, you see him getting hyped up in the bullpen after the team gives up 2 runs, and I think his mentality has really helped coming out of the pen. MSU Dog is McDaniel the starter for Ole Miss. I would imagine, but who knows? They've been filtering those guys in and out. He didn't have a good outing the other night. It's so strange to see all these guys that have regressed for Ole Miss. And like I said, State's had some similar situations. But, yeah, I would expect he would be their starter. And he pitched really well against MSU last year in the series in that Sunday game. Pitched really well into the 6th, 7th inning whenever he was pitching. So, he's had some success against State in the past. Taneki, do you think we hit the portal or JUCO in baseball more for pitchers or position players? I would say pitchers. They're going to have to pick up several pitchers out of the portal, and I would go get some of the better guys from some of these smaller conferences. Go out there and go get somebody that's been really effective, that's looking for a better opportunity. A guy like he's not a pitcher, but R.J. Yeager was tearing it up at Mercer. That was a guy that was just looking for a better opportunity. Mississippi State picks him up. I think you need those kind of players, those guys that the smaller conferences that are really torn it up, that are looking for better spots, not the guys that can't find playing time in Power 5. Those guys, a lot of times, they're not helping you as much as some of these other guys are playing at smaller schools. It seems to be those guys that come from the smaller conferences that were really good at those conferences. Those are the ones that make the biggest impact for whatever reason. It happens in a lot of sports too. So a lot of times you get caught up in names, guys that are ranked 5 stars coming out of high school, guys that were at big name colleges, and they couldn't get on the field or on the court, and you get caught up in that. And those guys end up they don't help you. The ones that really help you seem to be these guys that come from these smaller schools that have had a lot of production. So that's where that would be my sweet spot. I want to find another R.J. Yeager. I want to find guys like that. Oh, Owen, glad we won the series, but who told Pico to throw a fastball to Gonzalez? Yeah, it was a mistake. It wasn't really the fastball call as much as it was the location. And I think it was just a mistake pitch. I'm probably going breaking ball there, but I think you could win with a fastball, just not in that spot. I mean, that was in the perfect sweet spot for Gonzalez. And if he had a chance to take that one back, he absolutely would. Jay, chance of getting Ross Highfield to campus. Yeah, we were talking about him earlier. I don't know what his price tag is. I would imagine it's pretty high. But I would put the chances a little under 50% right now, just because I think he's going to be a really good prospect. But you never know. And I think State needs to have an NIL in place for a lot of these sports, but especially for baseball, for these guys, that makes it even more appealing to get to school. Everybody knows that it's a fun atmosphere at Mississippi State. It's a great program. You can play against some of the great players in baseball and great teams. But there's also that financial situation that those kids have if they go pro. And a lot of guys have their mind on that money. So, I mean, I think getting a good NIL set up for Mississippi State would go a long way in getting more players to campus, like maybe Ross Highfield. But it's going to be more and more desirable to come to college than it is the MLB, especially with these stories that are coming out about minor leagues, where you're making nothing and living out of your car, sometimes living on a bus. It's not a good situation. It's not as glamorous as people think it is. Taneki, I was surprised we didn't go after Zach Nito. Well, he didn't enter the portal, so he has to enter the portal for him to go after him. He stayed there, but yeah, that would have been a good pickup for them, and that would have answered any questions you had at shortstop. That's for sure, because you still are not getting a ton of production out of that position offensively. He would have been a huge piece of this lineup, I think. All right, any more questions? Once again, please subscribe if you aren't already to this channel. I really appreciate it. Appreciate you guys stopping in as usual. We've had a good time. But yeah, Tuesday, Mississippi State and Ole Miss and Pearl. They're going on the road this weekend to Missouri. And big weekend ahead for the Bulldogs. Not a whole lot else going on in Starkville with baseball right now. Women's basketball is trying to fill out at least one more spot of the roster. Men's basketball has a lot of spots to fill out with the transfer portal. And, we'll see what happens with all of that. So stay tuned. If you aren't on our website over at 247, stay tuned to that. We have updates when they come, and plenty of them coming down the pipe too. All right, guys. Well, I hope you guys have a great rest of your Sunday. Appreciate you stopping in here on a lazy Sunday afternoon for a little bit of Mississippi State sports talk, and we will talk again probably later this week or something like that. But make sure you're subscribed to not only to this channel, but Thunder and Lightning podcast. Brian Haydad and myself, we talk Mississippi State sports 5 days a week. Of course, this is not a great time if you're wanting a bunch of conversation this week because Brian is taking a few days off. We are going to have a recap of the series coming up later tonight, and that'll be posted so you can listen to that. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you guys. Hope you guys have a great rest of the week. We will talk to you next week, and we'll see you down the road.